Also because we have this absolutely beautiful weather and we are experiencing very low humidity in New Orleans right now. So what better thing to make on a low humidity day than lavender meringues, I thought. As you may know, if you are a baker or if you are interested in baking, meringues are mainly made out of egg whites. And it is a little bit of a complicated thing because if humidity is too high, even just the weather, they can be a little bit soggy because the sugar in the egg white mixture absorbs water. And so that makes it difficult for them to bake and to dry out and to get that nice meringue texture. But today's weather is so beautiful. I was doing the new newscast just a little while ago and I was showing the dew point temperatures. That's the measure of humidity at the surface. And they were so low. They were in the 30s for dew point temperatures. Easily in the summer, we could reach 70s for dew point temperatures. So the lower you go with the dew point temperatures, the less humid it is. And on such a beautiful, low humidity kind of day, this is the perfect day to make something like lavender meringues, which requires the humidity to be low to come out really good. So this is what we're making today. I'm so happy that it's a really easy and really, I think, very productive sort of recipe. You just put a little bit of time into it and it will really be finished very fast, and it is easy. Did you just hear my oven go off? I preheated my oven to 250 degrees because the protein in the egg whites really doesn't need very high heat at all to bake, and it will be a low and slow kind of baking process. Here is all you need today. It is not a lot. If you have these, you are good to go. 3 egg whites. If you like to weigh out your ingredients, this is equal to about 90 grams if you happen to have a little weighing device, a little scale. 1/4 teaspoon of lemon juice, and you can also use cream of tartar if you'd rather that. I didn't have any, so I used lemon juice. 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And if you have this, this would be a cool thing to add. I know a lot of us don't really bake with lavender too much, but if you happen to have some, or if you wanted to order some or get some somehow, I got mine from a friend who got it off of Amazon, then you could easily add that. So I think lavender, I mean, for me, I like the taste of it. I don't know if everyone does. To me, it has this kind of light, delicious, just sort of floral sort of taste. And what I did to make lavender sugar is the first thing that I did. I added my 2/3 of a cup of sugar to a bowl, and then I added 1 tablespoon, as you saw, of the lavender. So all you do is, this is what it looks like, by the way. If you have not gotten lavender, it's just these little buds sort of that it looks like, and it comes dried. That's how I used it. There's also lavender extract if you wanted to use that, but I'm using a tablespoon or so of the lavender, and all I did to make the lavender sugar was put the lavender in to the sugar and then just kind of like squeeze it sort of and just kind of work it in and make sure that the buds kind of get worked into the sugar, and it comes out looking just a tiny bit like you have a bowl of sugar with some little bugs or something in it. So this is what it looked like for me. So this is my lavender sugar. I just let it sit for a little while, maybe even just an hour or two. Actually, the first time I made these, I just let it sit for like the remainder of the recipe that I was doing. So it could be as little as, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that. So that is the lavender sugar. Then what I did was I did use one of these to filter out the lavender bits. So eventually I poured my lavender sugar over another bowl, and I used my little strainer here to catch the lavender bits so that there weren't a lot of those in the actual sugar. So all you're doing is just kind of making the sugar taste a little bit. And of course with lavender you don't want to go overboard because it can end up tasting, I guess, kind of soapy or something, although I like lavender so much I don't think that would be too bad. So that's what I have going right now. I also had my egg whites, just 3, and again, that's equal to about 90 grams, and I have it in my bowl. Now, as you know, beaters are really loud, so I didn't want to subject you guys to just a ton of loud noise on this Facebook Live. So I did go ahead and start my egg whites already. It was 3 of these in here, and I added just a tiny bit, as I mentioned, just about a 1/4 teaspoon of lemon juice. So all really simple ingredients besides the lavender, and if you don't have lavender, you could easily Google another little meringue recipe if you wanted to make that today and make it maybe with chocolate flavoring or vanilla or maybe even coffee or something like that. But mine is lavender today. So I had the egg whites and I basically just added the lemon juice and I started beating it, and I beat it for not long. This is a kind of small scale recipe, so it doesn't take long. Only 3 eggs you need anyway. So I beat it for maybe 5 or 6 minutes, less than that probably, and I started adding the sugar eventually, just tablespoon by tablespoon. So it comes into, you know, kind of produces this beautiful shiny egg white look. It's glossy, it's beautiful, and you can see the ripples. And of course, what we're doing with this, to get into a little bit of the science of it, is that we are denaturing the proteins in the egg whites. Egg whites, there are 3 of them in here, and of course you don't want yolks in there because the fat from egg yolks would interfere with this beautiful process of creating this beautiful cloud of egg whites. But egg whites are water and protein. So what happens when we start to beat it is that the amino acids in the proteins start to unfurl or denature, and they start to take up a lot more space. And so that, as we add the sugar, kind of gets coated in the sugar, and it kind of stabilizes it and allows these beautiful air bubbles to form and to get bigger and bigger and expand. To me, this is one of the coolest things about baking, is to see an egg white eventually become this beautiful, glossy, just cloud of a deliciousness. So that is really fun for me. So the beating causes it to denature, the proteins and amino acids to denature and unfurl. The sugar, again, helps the amino acids to kind of form on these bubbles and really get bigger and bigger. And then we add the lemon juice or cream of tartar, or some people use a little bit of vinegar as an acid that also helps these bonds between the amino acids to form up into a network. If you overbeat eggs, egg whites, I don't know if this has happened to you before, this has happened to me in the past, it gets runny and everything kind of separates. And what that does is it causes, why that happens is the amino acid bonds and networks are getting too tight. So it's too much beating, everything is getting too tight, and it kind of forces the moisture out. So that's why you eventually would end up with kind of a runny, just kind of mess if you did have egg whites that went too long. But on this beautiful low humidity day, we don't have a lot of issues with too much water getting into the sugar that we've added. We have these, this is so much fun, again, on a nice low humidity day to just see this form up, just like this. And we've added pretty much all of our ingredients at this point. I just beat it. I'm gonna beat it really quickly just for a final bit here, just to make sure. Okay, that everything is good. And then of course you want to make sure that you have those stiff peaks, which mine are getting a tiny bit soft because I've been talking a little bit. So that's kind of the basics of the science of this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pipe them. You may have heard my oven go off. It was at 250 degrees. And I have 2 baking sheets that I sprayed very, very lightly with a little bit of cooking spray just to make sure that nothing sticks. And then we have the lavender sugar, we have the egg whites, and we have that little bit of lemon juice in here. All I'm going to do now, and this is totally optional, is actually pipe it. So I don't know if you guys have one of these. I got one of these kind of piping sets. These are really cheap. I just got them. It's really fun, I think. If you don't have a piping set like this, where you have the nozzle that you can choose and then a little pastry bag, if you don't have this, no big deal. You can easily just scoop out little spoonfuls of your beautiful mixture and put them one by one on this little, tray, and then you can pop it in the oven at 250 degrees. I am going to try, and if you guys will kind of stick with me for a second, I'm going to try and make this a little bit fancy. So I have a little bit of food coloring, purple food coloring, and I'm just going to paint going to add a tiny bit of water here with the food coloring, and I'm going to paint two lines, or one big line, down the side of the pastry bag. So I hope this doesn't seem too big a deal or take too long, but I just wanted to do it really quickly so that we can have a pretty swirl show up when we take this out of the oven. So just give me 1 second here. I'm just painting down the side of this pastry bag and just getting a tiny bit of this purple food coloring. I went with purple, of course, because it's a lavender recipe. And so if you did a different flavor, you could easily change the color, of course. But that's really about all that there is to it. It doesn't look too fancy. In fact, it looks like a bit of a mess, but it does come out, which is a nice surprise. So now I'm going to transport all of my egg whites mixture into the bag, and let me see what I'm going to use for that. I guess I'll use this thing. And again, if you do not have the pastry bag, no big deal. It will come out really pretty, just as it is, if you just spoon it onto your tray. So here we go. I'm transferring the egg whites into the pastry bag. And as you can see, this recipe is already pretty much like done itself. There's not much to it besides whipping the egg whites, adding that bit of acid and sugar, watching the proteins denature, watching all the amino acids coat these air bubbles, and eventually getting this beautiful mixture of egg whites and sugar and so forth. I've put it into my pastry bag, and now I'm going to pipe it out. So if you do have one of these, this is a fun, kind of even like a practice thing that you could use if you've just gotten one of these. If you're like everyone, including me, and baking all the time these days, as we're all at home, and you invested your whatever, what is it, $10 or something to get these on Amazon and things like that. So this is a fun little recipe that you could just whip up just to even just get some experience with it, like I have done before. So here we go. I'm going to start piping. Just little dots, just like this. Can you guys see? Onto, let me scoot back a little bit, onto my tray. And it's coming out pretty well, I think. Eventually you'll see that little swirl of purple showing up. And what I'm going to do after I finish these is coat them with a tiny bit of the lavender buds. So I'm just going to sprinkle a tiny bit of that on these. And again, this is just a little bit of culinary or food grade lavender that I'm just adding right to the top and just kind of sprinkling very lightly. If you don't like lavender quite so much, you maybe wouldn't want to sprinkle a whole bunch of this on the top, but I do like the taste of lavender. So I'm putting a little dollop just to kind of give it a nice artful sort of look and a nice little taste as well. So this is my first little bit. It's going in the oven at 250 degrees and you bake it for 45 minutes. So it's really a pretty simple recipe to make, and it's pretty quick too. This is like a project that, again, if you have students or kids who are interested in baking and interested in science, you could very easily do this with your kids maybe in an hour or less. A nice little project. And then let me show you the finished product. If you haven't seen my Facebook or my Twitter or something, I posted a bunch of pictures, but this was a batch that I made yesterday, and this is what they come out looking like. So just to give you a little closer up look, this is one of the little lavender meringues. So here's the little swirl of purple that came out. This is the little lavender buds, of course, on the top. And then this is the delicious egg white with the sugar and that little bit of lemon juice. And that's it pretty much that went into this. So I baked it for 45 minutes, took it out of the oven, and it is amazing how easy this is, especially on a day with low humidity. Again, if you have high humidity and you try to make an egg white recipe like this, the sugar in the egg white mixture, attracts water, and so it kind of draws in the moisture, and it can make it kind of soggy, and it can just take a really long time in the oven to dry out. So instead of a 45-minute oven bake at a nice low 250, it might take a lot longer. And sometimes it can still be a little bit soggy and maybe not ever get that nice little kind of crunchy texture on the outside. So I'm gonna try it, guys. Here we go. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? A nice crunch on the outside. And this is kind of what it looks like on the inside, if you can see. Kind of marshmallowy. And then again, that lavender flavor, I really like it. I don't know if everyone does. Maybe it's not everyone's favorite, but I think it tastes really good. And again, just with that little bit, tablespoon of lavender buds in 2/3 of a cup of sugar, just scrunching it up like I showed you, and then just leaving it in the bowl for anywhere from a half hour or even 15 minutes up to several hours like I did this morning. I did make it earlier. So that's how you would make your lavender sugar, and that's all that I did, and then sprinkled a tiny bit on the top. So you guys, today we talked about kind of the amino acid structure of the egg whites. As you beat them, they denature. That allows the air bubbles to really form up. We talked about how simple this ingredient list is. Again, if you're just joining me and you wanted to do this, and I will post on my Facebook a link to this general recipe so you can make it yourself. But this is really all that you need to make these wonderful low humidity lavender that we've just made. So thank you guys for joining me today. Again, super easy, super quick, 4 ingredients, and they are really good, I must say. And if you make it today or if you make it tomorrow, we'll have low humidity both days, and it should come out pretty well. And again, very quick. You can whip it up in about an hour or so. Bake it for 45 minutes, take it out, and enjoy. I'm gonna have a few more. So thanks, guys. Have a good rest of this afternoon. I will see you for more weather lessons next week, and I'll see you on the Eyewitness News this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at noons. So have a good rest of the day, and take care, guys.